Today we're out in the garden harvesting dill, and I'm going to show you how I preserve it so that I can make pickles and dill for sauces and different things. And we're also going to be harvesting and cleaning our AEROgarden. This is my elephant dill. It's so big and it's actually starting to seed up on the top. So this is my dill. I've cut the whole stalk out of the garden. Now this is one dill plant. As you can see, these stems, I'm cutting the green leaves off of the stems and I'm putting those into clean water and just washing any kind of dirt or anything that's accumulated on the plants. And then what I do is I go through this whole thing, and I want to just make a note. This huge amount of dill came from one seed. Now, this particular kind of dill is called elephant dill. It's much bigger. It grows a much bigger stalk and leaves and all kinds of things than a regular mammoth dill does. You can see it's a dark, rich green, and I like to dehydrate these for pickles. This is the first time I've ever grown the elephant dill, and I usually grow the dill at different times. I start off with some dill that I can dehydrate for the pickles, and then I have fresh dill that comes ripe when my cucumbers come ripe. So I kind of mix between the dehydrated and the fresh dill, and then part of the dill that I dehydrate, I actually put through a food processor, and I have that on hand for when I make different kinds of sauces for fish or tzatziki or, anything like that. Then I always have dill on hand. So let me go through and clean this dill, and then I'll show you what I do with it next time. Now these are all the stems that I had left over from cutting the heads and the leaves off of the dill. Now I haven't found a use for these yet. I guess you could put them in your composter, but they're really woody and heavy. So what I do is I just put them in a bag and throw them in the trash. So while my dill leaves are soaking in the cold water, I'm actually going to take my AEROgarden, which is really overgrown, and I'm going to be cutting some more dill off of this garden, and then I'll take care of some other of the leaves. I've got some basil and different things in there. But on this particular plant, it just hasn't done as well as the one that's been out in the dirt in the garden. It's done okay. I mean, I'm going to get a handful of, different kinds of, herb leaves off of this, and it's going to work out fine. So I'm just going to go through and clean this, and then I'll show you how I actually, after I get everything cut off these stems, then I'm going to show you how I clean my AEROgarden. So after I harvest all of the leaves off of my plant, I take the little pods out. Now there's a plastic pod and there's another little pod inside of it that absorbs the water and grows the seeds. So I take the roots off so that I can pull the middle part out. So right now I'm just taking off all the extra little roots, and then I'm going to pull that little pod out. I'm going to clean the white part of that plastic, and I'm going to throw the rest of it in the trash, the little part that absorbs the seed, because it's really useless at this point. So I'm going to go through and clean all of these pods, and then I'll show you the next step. So the next thing I've done is I've taken my salad spinner out, and my leaves from my dill that have been, being cleaned in the water, I'm going to put those in a salad spinner, and I'm going to start putting those through the spinner so that I can get some of the excess water off. It's something I always do when I dehydrate my herbs. It just takes a little bit of time off of the dehydrating. So I'm going to get the water off of all of this lettuce so that I can make room to clean all of my AEROgarden. So now we're ready to put our clean dill onto the dehydrator and get started with the dehydrating process. This is very quick considering how much dill you're going to get from this. It's just it's a great way to preserve your harvest. If you've never used a dehydrator, this is such a great way to go. I do this with all kinds of things. I've got several videos on how to dehydrate in the oven if you don't have a dehydrator. All kinds of neat things. So feel free, I'm gonna link, maybe I'll link one above so that you can see like what I do with some of my herbs after I dehydrate them. Now this particular herb of the dill, I'm using specifically for pickles. And I'm also going to use some of this dill for my different sauces that I make for fish and things like that. So I've got a ton of fresh dill, but this dill ripened very early. It's called elephant dill, and it's wonderful. This is one plant of dill. It's just amazing to me. I think of how many plants it takes me to get enough plants to make pickles. And this elephant dill, you really only need one plant. I planted 2 seeds and I got all this dill. It's just an incredible amount. But you know, I also make a lot of pickles for the whole year. I do the Polish dill pickle and I do the kosher dill pickle. And I like both of them very much. So I'm just going to continue to fill these trays, and that will give me a nice little dehydrated amount of dill. Now, these trays are not going to do it all. They're not going to be able to hold all this dill. I can tell already because, you know, I dehydrate a lot of stuff. So what I'm going to do is whatever I am not able to fit in my trays this morning, I'm going to go ahead and put in a bag in the refrigerator. And then when I'm, done dehydrating this dill, I'll put a second batch in and work on that. And the reason I do that is I want to keep the dill as fresh as possible before dehydrating it. And it will work out very good. Like I said, I've done this many times before. I don't buy herbs at all. Whatever I want to use in my cooking or eating, I buy the seeds, I grow them, and this is just how I've always done it. I've always had a dehydrator, and when I haven't, you also can take a bunch of herbs, and you know, if you don't want to use the oven and you don't want to use the dehydrator, you can always throw a rubber band around them and hang them in a nice, you know, comfortable place like a garage or something like that. So I actually have 4 trays. I fill them up as much as I possibly can. And then I will put this in my laundry room. It's going to be a pretty strong smell. Dill is, as you know, a very strong smell when you taste pickles. The dill and garlic are the 2 biggest things that you're going to be smelling when you take a bite of your dill pickles. So let me finish this. I'm going to put the rest in the refrigerator, and I'll be back with you in just a little bit. So now that I've put all of the dill away, either in the dehydrator or in my refrigerator, I'm going to take apart my AEROgarden, and after every time I grow everything, look at these extra roots. There's just so many. Anyway, that is just some water that has fertilizer in it, and this is what helps your plants grow. So at the end of their growing season, I go ahead and clean every single inch of this AEROgarden. I want it nice and clean and ready for the next set of seeds. So after the AEROgarden is taken apart and I've emptied all the water, I take a separate sponge that I don't use for my dishes. This is just for cleaning, like the hummingbird feeder and the AEROgarden. Anyway, I clean it with some nice warm soapy water, and then for the other pieces that I can't get the buildup off of, I actually use an SOS pad. but I do this every time that I am done with my plants, my herbs that I grow before I start the next ones. And I just think that it just makes it more sanitary. It just makes it nicer for the new ones to grow. This is my second set of dill that I'm going to be dehydrating. And this is how much dill I got, dried dill I got from all that 4 levels of dehydrator. That's a lot of dill. So from this to this. Well, thank you so much for joining me today as we harvested, we dehydrated, cleaned our dill, and also for cleaning out the AEROgarden and harvesting all of those herbs as well. So if you've enjoyed this content today, can you please give me a like or a thumbs up, or consider subscribing to my channel. I'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.